It starts with a single scroll, a thumb moving almost unconsciously across a screen flooded with endless options. And in that fraction of a second, a silent battle begins, your video versus 100 others. And what decides the winner is not logic, not quality, but instinct, because the human brain does not carefully analyze thumbnails and titles. It reacts to them, it scans for patterns, for emotions, for something that feels impossible to ignore, and if your content does not trigger that reaction instantly, it disappears into the noise before it even has a chance to prove its value. The uncomfortable truth is that clicks are not earned through effort, they are triggered through psychology, and most creators misunderstand this completely. They believe if their content is good enough, people will click, but on YouTube, the click comes before the content is experienced, which means your idea must be sold before it is even seen, and that sale happens in less than a second, making your thumbnail and title the most important decisions you will ever make. What actually drives a click is not information, it is curiosity, tension, fear of missing out, identity, and emotional contrast, because the brain is constantly asking one question: what do I gain if I click this? And if your content does not answer that instantly, clearly, and emotionally, the viewer moves on without a second thought, not because your content is bad, but because it did not feel necessary in that moment. Curiosity works because it creates a gap between what the viewer knows and what they want to know, and the wider and more specific that gap is, the stronger the pull becomes. But there is a balance. If you reveal too much, the curiosity dies. And if you reveal too little, the viewer feels confused, and confusion never converts into clicks, which is why the best creators operate in that precise middle zone where clarity meets mystery. Then comes identity, one of the most powerful but invisible triggers, because people do not just click on content, they click on reflections of themselves, on things that feel relevant to their situation, their struggles, their goals, and when your content speaks directly to who they are or who they want to become, the click becomes almost automatic because it feels personal, not general. Fear is another silent driver, not fear in the dramatic sense, but subtle fear, like missing out on something important, being left behind, or not knowing something others do. And when your title or thumbnail hints at a consequence of not watching, it creates urgency, and urgency pushes action, often faster than curiosity alone ever could. But none of these triggers work if your message is not instantly clear, because clarity is the foundation of every click. The viewer should not have to think about what your video is about, they should feel it immediately. And this is where many creators fail. They try to be clever instead of clear, complex instead of direct, and in doing so, they lose the one thing that matters most in that first second of decision. Visual contrast also plays a critical role because the brain is wired to notice difference, something that stands out from its surroundings, whether it is color, emotion, composition, or simplicity, and thumbnails that break patterns, that feel visually distinct from everything around them, naturally pull attention without forcing it, making the click feel effortless rather than persuaded. Timing matters as well, because the same idea can perform differently depending on when it is presented, what trends are active, what the audience is currently interested in, and how relevant your topic feels in that moment, which is why successful creators are not just creative, they are observant, constantly aware of what their audience is already thinking about. And then there is the subtle art of promise, because every click is based on an expectation, a belief that the video will deliver something valuable. And if your thumbnail and title make a promise that feels both exciting and believable, the viewer commits. But if that promise feels exaggerated or unclear, trust breaks before it even begins. Once you understand these layers, clicks stop feeling random. They become predictable outcomes of deliberate choices, and you begin to see patterns everywhere. Why certain videos pull you in instantly while others feel invisible. Why some creators dominate attention while others struggle despite effort. And this awareness changes how you approach everything. Instead of asking, "Is this a good video?" you start asking, "Is this a clickable idea?" Because no matter how valuable your content is, if it does not earn the click, it will never be seen. And this shift forces you to prioritize packaging as much as content, to treat presentation not as decoration but as strategy. You begin testing different angles, experimenting with different ways of framing the same idea, noticing how small changes in wording or visuals can dramatically change outcomes, and through this process, you develop instinct, a sense of what will work before you even publish, because you have trained yourself to think like the viewer. And over time, as this instinct sharpens, you no longer rely on hope or guesswork. You operate with intention, knowing that every click is the result of a specific trigger you designed, a reaction you anticipated, and a decision you guided without forcing. And this is where growth starts accelerating in a controlled and repeatable way. Because in the end, clicks are not about luck. They are about understanding, about respecting how fast people decide, how emotionally they react, and how easily they move on. And once you truly understand that, once you master the psychology behind that single moment of choice, you unlock the first real gate of YouTube growth, the moment where your content stops being ignored and starts being chosen.